For leaders, communication is not just a conveyance of valuable information. It's more than that. It's about connecting to group members and inspiring them to achieve the group's goals. Communication is fundamental for executing strategy and promoting organizational cohesion. And yet, it is often one of the most exigent leadership skills. This is because effective communication from the get-go seems easy to say, but in actuality is not easy to do. Good morning, I am Silbert, and today I will discuss about the topic of effective leadership and communication. The discussion is divided into three parts. First, why effective communication is a tell sign of effective leadership. Second, the characteristics of an effective leader and how these qualities contribute to effective communication. And the importance of trust in both communication and leadership. Hopefully, this video will help leaders and members of an organization in identifying strategies to inculcate effective communication. The pieces of information synthesized in this discussion come from 5 substantial references, which are Trust, Communication, and Leadership, The 3 Laws of Influence by Kellie Cummings. Palace, Drug War Satisfaction Rating Allowed Repudiation of Duterte's Critics by Darryl John Esguerra. High Impact Communicating, a Key Leadership Practice by Charles D. Kerns. Effective leadership is all about communicating effectively. Connecting Leadership and Communication by Anchal, Luthra, and Dr. Richa, Dahiya. New leadership communication study shows 44% of business leaders are unhappy with their employee performance by Weisman. To start with, let me tell you about the correlation between effective leadership and effective communication. As cited by Kerns, Richa and his colleagues deduced that communication is a critical practice area within the interpersonal influence domain that can provide leadership effectiveness and organizational outcomes. The way I understand it, communication is a vital action that should be available for free access by members in an organization so that there will be flourishing of efficient management, effective leadership, and, in consequence, produces clear pathways to achieve organizational goals. Without communication, there's no transmission of information, and will only perpetuate shambolic movements which could lead to the downfall of an organization. Throughout history, we all know that greatest effective leaders have also been great and effective communicators. Best leaders are able to motivate and encourage others to work toward a common goal. One of the relatively effective leaders in our country today is our current chief executive, President Rodrigo Duterte. In my opinion, he is far from a perfect leader. However, the way he communicates to his constituents is undeniably aggressive and effective. In fairness, Duterte's proactive communication regarding on his War on Drugs initiative provides police forces with a replete and relentless energy to fight against drug trafficking in our country. On top of that, as cited by Esguerra in his news article, the Social Weather Station released a recent public survey that shows 79% of Filipinos are satisfied with the campaign against drugs. To me, this result reveals a quantifiable perception on how effective of a leader Duterte is in regard to the War on Drugs campaign, moral repercussions aside. His solid communication can only then be described as something relatively effective. Following the aforementioned example, it is critical that organizational leaders should prioritize and hone their communication skills to successfully guide their teams and drive overall productivity. Research indicates a strong link between communication and effective leadership. A study conducted by Weisman Success Resources found that 44% of responding business leaders reported they were unhappy with their employees' work. Of that group, 70% said they felt they needed to improve how they communicated with their employees in order to resolve the performance issues and improve motivation. Of the group that was happy with their team's performance, 70% of the managers attributed this to their communication skills. These conclusive results can only mean that leaders do know that in order for them to be effective, they must possess authentic and effective communication skills. With all of the facts being said, I infer that the correlation between leadership and communication focuses on the act of influencing others. The role of an effective leader is to influence others in achieving a common goal, and that communication is the transmission and receiving of accurate information in which influence tags along. Therefore, influence is the knotting of a lemniscate, a binding of leadership and communication. Since we now know the correlation between leadership and communication, allow me to share to you the characteristics of an effective leader, which are actual contributions to effective communication. This model is derived from Anchal, Luthra, and Dr. Richa Dahiya's 2015 academic journal. With effective communication, leaders can stimulate employees. They will stay engaged and perform their duties more efficiently. Leaders' communication matching with his actions helps too, and the communication must always be two-way. This means allowing the listener to communicate to the leader to form a response as well. In contrast, the root causes of numerous problems in the workplace are due to improper communication and untimely sharing of information. In order to correct these organizations, there are communication principles that an excellent leader should possess, and these are the following: confidence, energy, self-motivation, and communicates without fear. A leader must be confident while communicating with others. Lack of confidence while communicating creates a sense of disbelief and can make team members feel uncomfortable and unenthusiastic about their work. He or she should communicate without keeping in mind the fear of committing errors too. In any case, where the leader ends up committing an error, he or she should admit them openly to gain trust and respect of the team members. Leaders must also be energetic in order to motivate listeners. If the leader is already motivated, he or she can easily motivate others. Confidence and motivation help a team to work together to achieve desired goals. Clarity, precision, open-mindedness, and all-inclusiveness. A leader must have a clear thought process and should possess quick but precise thinking. As leaders keep in mind the intellectual level and understanding of the listeners, they will be able to convert multifaceted concepts into simpler forms to make his team understand and, in consequence, allows them to perform extremely well. To supplement clarity, the leader must then be skillful in narrating stories and using anecdotes in order to instigate understandings and behaviors. The leader must also communicate the rules clearly and should set an example in following those rules. This sends a good message to them. He or she must also communicate with an open mind, always welcoming suggestions and ideas for improvement, and acknowledges and values diverse thoughts, pieces of knowledge, and cultures that correspond to the organization's own sets of values. Trustworthiness, amiability, transparency, and understanding. Effective leaders must be steady and trustworthy while they communicate. There must be value, grace, and regularity when they interact with their teams in order to develop trustworthiness among them. A quick change in attitude is not considered as the best quality for leaders. Moreover, they must always be amiable and easy to approach without any barriers. Team members, when left with doubt about the information shared during the communication process, must be able to approach the readily available leader. Inaccessibility makes a leader unsuccessful and incompetent. In order for those instances to diminish, the leader must repeat the message several times until the last member of the group understands the meaning of it, as this will help increase productivity. The leaders must establish a transparent system of communication too. There should be no space for any grapevine to develop in the workplace. The best way to prevent this from happening is to always encourage a feedback system, as this will help overcome the shortcomings and rectify any existing errors. Lastly, an effective leader must swap his ego with understanding, as ego hinders learning and decreases the appreciative tendencies, which could lead to many problems among team members. Comprehensiveness and a great listener. Quality leaders should be comprehensive in communication and must try to overcome difference positively and practically. He or she must be aware of what he or she is speaking to the team. Communicators must select a message without any ambiguity and therefore must have full knowledge of the subject to avoid possible confusions. Leaders must be aware too with the use of all communication technologies and channels like face-to-face meetings, video conferences, telephone conferences, emails, etc. to keep in touch with all the teammates and motivate them from time to time. This is also important these days, especially that the international scene is struck with a pandemic, and team interactions can get limited to the online sphere, so as to observe government-mandated health protocols. Finally, a leader must emphasize and embody effective listening rather than a complete focus on effective speaking alone, because to hear patiently is as significant as to say effectively. These leadership characteristics are tell signs on how effective a leader can be. A leader must first be a communicator in order for effectiveness to flourish. These characteristics are not exclusive from each other, and therefore a leader must possess them all. It's clear to me that the attributes are interconnected, and only an embodiment of every attribute can result to effective communication and leadership. Finally, as we're heading to the last part of this discussion, let's know why trust is very important in leadership and communication. According to Cummings, communication is the thread that enables leaders to create a culture of trust within their organization. Once trust is established, leaders can achieve their goals more effectively and efficiently with the full faith and support of their team. Today, organizations are built on trust. Members of an organization have specialized tasks and responsibilities, and the only way to collaborate effectively is to understand each other, which is the core of trust. Employees learn to understand each other through communication, specifically by asking questions and listening thoughtfully to the answer. Therefore, leaders need to adopt the practice of asking more questions in order to appreciate the mindset of individual team members. In June of 2011, the International Journal of Business and Management presented a study entitled Communication, Commitment, and Trust, Exploring the Triad by Rashid Zefani, Syed Tipu, and James C. Ryan. The research paper reviewed previous studies on these topics along with data from a survey of 244 employees at a medium-sized company based in Australia. Their findings revealed that trust and commitment do not just happen. They are forged and maintained through effective communication. This research provides some excellent evidence-based pointers for managers who want to understand how communication affects trust and engagement. Following are 4 valuable highlights. Perception of effective communication with senior management has one of the strongest effects on a company's trust climate. Second, when communication channels begin to deteriorate, misunderstandings and misrepresentations abound and a climate of mistrust sets in. Third, managers' ability to listen, communicate clearly, and lead had the strongest effect on employees' organizational commitment. And lastly, to promote and build positive trust relationships, senior managers must communicate as honestly and directly as possible with their employees, particularly during uncertain times. It's important to emphasize that the results of this comprehensive study heavily mirror those leadership characteristics I synthesized from Luthra and Dahiya's 2015 academic journal. They obviously have the same inferences and points to consider about the nature of communication in leadership. That being said, building trust, therefore, is more essential than ever for today's leaders. Communication, the tool we use each day to build rapport and understanding with everyone in our lives, is also the tool for cultivating trust. By mastering the nuances of communication, we are able to excel in the role of a trusted leader. In conclusion, based on the research I've done, I can infer that with effective communication and leadership, organizations can expedite their process toward achieving their goals. We now know that various interpersonal strategies can be adopted in inculcating effective communication. A leader can only be effective when she or he is an excellent communicator and possesses all the leadership characteristics that I have discussed. This is the end of my report. I hope you have gleaned relevant information and strategies that could help you and your team. Once again, good morning, and thank you for listening.